Hey, what's up everybody? Chris Mechanic here from Web Mechanics with Shlomo Trachtenberg. Today we're going to talk about testing. Testing in the realm of conversion rate optimization. And testing, like, it's a cultural thing these days. A lot of our clients are really quick to say, hey, we should test that. So anytime there's two different ideas, clients are quick to say, hey, we should test that. But the reality is that not very many websites get enough traffic to actually do proper tests where you get statistically significant results. So sometimes, like, testing that ends up being, hey, just change it and kind of hope that
see
it
what
works.
happens, right?
Kind of hope that it
we'll do
doesn't.
they call it the pre and post test,
Right?
Which obviously doesn't work well, because then what happens is you have external factors when you do pre and post. Because, for example, holiday season,
weather, whatever it might be.
Exactly. So
how can people test effectively in low traffic environments?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that actually applies to most websites, because to get really statistically significant results, you really need to be having like 500 to 1,000 transactions within a 30-day period.
Right.
Because otherwise, what transactions meaning a form fill, meaning a conversion on a sale, whatever it might be. But most websites, in order to get that at a 3%, 4% conversion rate, even lower, whatever it might be, you need a significant amount of traffic, and not most websites don't have that type of traffic to support it, right? Yeah. So we came up with like this hack, right? Which was we've used this like on a lot of our clients, and what we do is basically, instead of testing. Every website, you have your conversion point, but there's also what we call micro conversions, which are like these smaller conversion points. And those smaller conversion points are much easier to get statistical significance on, and they're indicators that you're heading in the right direction, that the change that you're making is right. So some of those might be, we might test for like, decrease in bounce rate, right? So statistically, did the variation decrease bounce rate? You go for those other metrics that are smaller, time on page, those things aren't necessarily the end of the story. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say, hey, this is like, you did well, but they're very indicative of that positive change. Right. So testing for micro conversions or email captures, things which you have higher volume of, those are the things that you could actually scale and actually run on low traffic environments. Yeah, so make your testing metric higher up in the funnel. So instead of testing, hey, how many sales does this make? You can test, hey, bounce rates, you can test time on page, you can test number of page views for more engagement metrics. Now, we typically don't really like, I would refer to those sometimes as fluffier engagement metrics, because they're so close to the money. Now, what about testing? Well, hold on, before you go further, they are fluffy. But what I like to do is, and I think this is anyone who's doing this should do this, is basically use Google Analytics and segment out people who've converted. And look at those fluffy metrics and compare them to people who are not converted. And now you'll see which ones are indicators when people they take to get further down the funnel and actually convert. Then use those metrics and now start testing them in a lower environment. Yeah. Now, say I'm in e-commerce, or I'm running a pretty complex Google Ads account, and I've got like 40 different landing pages, each that get 100 or 500 or whatever. Is there some way that we can test elements across groups of pages? Yeah, so depending on what tool you use, but typically you could test a change across all, let's call it across a template. Yeah. Right. So if you have a product page, so then you might have hundreds of different products, but there's certain changes, where you position your reviews, where different types of headlines and those types of things could be changed across the template. And, yeah, and you want to basically make sure you're getting as much into the test as possible. Yep. Yeah, we had this one client. They were a contractor, and they had this form on the right sidebar, and it said something like "need a quote," and we tested that against. Get a firm quote in an hour or less, guaranteed, and it just went skyrocket. All right, that's all from us. Chris Mechanic, Shlomo, Web Mechanics.